Scott Dochterman. Chad Leistikow. Together on one pod, talking odds and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners. Exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. Welcome into Legends and Listeners on Iowa Everywhere with me, Chad Leistikow. I'm a sports columnist at the Des Moines Register. Him, Scott Dochterman of The Athletic. Episode number 67, Scott, coming to everyone from the Channel Seed Studios. As always, I think we're 67 for 67 on the Channel Seed Studios being our home. It is an Iowa football bye week, Scott, so that gives us all kinds of time to focus on the complete meltdown and dysfunction of the Chicago Bears.
Yes. I think it's an appropriate time to talk about the Bears. As much angst as everyone has had over Iowa losing a 3-point game on the road on 6 days rest, I think the Bears have proven that there's no level of dysfunction above what they're experiencing and continue to experience and will into the future. So we can commiserate all for an hour if we wanted to on this, although we know it needs to lead into something Iowa related.
Yeah.
Big Ten related.
Yeah, Scott, as you guys probably know, Scott and I are lifelong Chicago Bears fans. I got spoiled probably in my sports life because, I grew up in the early to mid 80s and the Chicago Bears were amazing. That was the Super Bowl shuffle era. Mm-hmm. And think about growing up in Iowa City at that time. You're getting the peak of the Hayden Fry crescendo, which, 85, I don't know, arguably one of the best Iowa teams of all time. I mean, you could probably put it right up there with the 2002 Hawks and maybe some old time teams, right? But
yeah,
that's how I became a Bears fan, right? I mean, that's what I grew up with, and I've stuck with them this long, Scott, and I'm about done. And I see you've got your Lions shirt on. I think we both agreed. Well, we don't have to do this together, but I think we're both on the same page. I have a lot more fun watching the Detroit Lions right now, and I don't mind. Yeah. I have to be okay sometime in my life switching from my favorite team. Like, I've given them 40 years since that Super Bowl, and I just don't know if I can give anymore.
You're right. And it's not just that they lose tough games or whatever. That's survivable. That's football, as one coach said 10 years ago. But what the problem is the dysfunction. That every year there's something. They never are on alignment. They never decide we're going to hire a GM, a coach, and get a quarterback all functioning as one entity and grow into it. And so right now I'm kind of to that George Jones song, He Stopped Loving Her Today. I'm taking my ring and leaving, walking out the door on the Bears. We're in our 50s now. We've done this since we were little kids. I remember watching my first game I ever watched on television was Packers Bears in 1980 with Chester Markle. That should have learned right there. Kicking a 6-6 in overtime, kicks a field goal. The Bears block it. And the Packers kicker, Chester Markle, runs it in for a touchdown. And I should have known right then that I was in for a lifelong heartbreak. And but it's just in the last 20 or so years, Chad, other than Lovey for a couple of years there, it's been miserable. It's really for the last 30 years as a Bears fan, other than 05, 06, maybe 10, it's just been like, what's our investment level? It's kind of like, I guess, being probably like Minnesota Gophers football fan in some ways, where you're like, what's the payoff? When are we going to get our investment back? And it's not so much money or shirts or whatever. It's time spent, time discussing it, texting time, agony. And it's like every weekend we're like, what the hell? And I know this translates over into the topic of the day for us, but yeah. I think we both and several others of us who've been on this train for so long are just feeling the same way. It's like, I got to divorce myself here. I don't know how much more time I have on this earth, but I'm not going to let the McCaskies ruin one more game of it.
Yeah, like I honestly didn't watch the Patriots game, which my son had something going on that day, so it was good that I missed it. But I was excited to tune into the Lions Sunday night, and we like Jack Campbell, we like Sam Laporta. They're the Lions anyway, so there's a lot of good reason. They're fun to watch. Mm-hmm. I like the head coach. So anyway, I'm not declaring that I'm an all-time Lions fan, but I definitely have more fun watching them. And Scott, that we chose this topic for a good reason, because it does bleed into what we're seeing from a lot of Iowa fans out there, very frustrated after a 20-17 loss in the Rose Bowl. You feel like you've seen this before, right? For 40 years, you've seen this movie before. Like, oh my God, like why do I stick with this team? But I think the conversation here, Scott, we can hit a fork in the road here, right? I think there's some segment of the audience that feels like they're kind of starting to check out of the Ferentz era, and it's everyone's choice. So the question you posed, which I loved, which is why should I keep supporting Iowa, or versus why should I punt on Iowa and Kirk Ferentz? So I'll let you start. Where do you want to take this?
Yeah, I think this is a healthy question and a healthy debate for the fan base. I think there were some people who took it over the top this weekend, as always. And I tried to give them food for thought, but they weren't interested in any kind of fact-based discussion on it. I think you can be right about several things here, but how your emotions deal with it and process it just kind of depends on your mood at the moment. And that is, this team has been largely successful. Let's start at the very top. This team is never going to win a national championship. Okay. Let's just establish that. If it does, I don't see it happening. 2, it may be as difficult to win the Big Ten championship as it is the national championship with an Iowa or Wisconsin or something like that, because you're looking at Ohio State. Okay, but the next tier is totally attainable, which is be very competitive to reach the tournament and advance in the tournament, 1, maybe 2 games. Those are things that I think are legitimate for Iowa. And probably the problem that I've seen from this program over the years, over the last 20 years, Chad, is that every time fans kind of get their hopes up, like this might be a special year, it's a letdown. It's almost like the year before provides the, okay, so you almost have to enjoy it while it's happening, because the next year, whether it's 2010 after going to the Orange Bowl and winning the Orange Bowl and bringing back everybody, or 2016 where you go to the Rose Bowl and you bring back the quarterback and Josie Jewell and several other players, and you have a letdown. And then this year is in that same ballpark because they're 6-4. I said it, and people are kind of twisting this around for me, where I said it's playoff or bust. I didn't mean like you go out and execute the staff, start firing people. I mean, but I do think that it means that it's a disappointing season. Now, what do you do about it if it doesn't? That's a different discussion. But overall, I can understand why people are starting to lose faith, because the one thing you have to have in college sports more than anything else is faith and trust and hope that your program can succeed and reach a level of success. This program seemed to be on a path to where it had a chance to reach the playoff. And I'll say 2 games, UCLA and Michigan State, which were winnable games, both based on the numbers and the opponent, they let slip away, and they did not play their style of football. That's frustrating and depressing. The Iowa State game is frustrating because it's a rival. They're a pretty good team. They're slow. They're not playing as well now, but I think where we're getting to this point is so many people have so much space in the attic, so much history and junk and garbage in the attic, that it's like, it's just another one. And it starts to pile up. And after a while, you're just like, I need to take all this out and start over again. And so that's why I understand, even though it's been a successful era, and it's been an successful run even over the last 6, 7, 8 years, that people are they're ready for something new. Now, I'll let you jump in because I said a lot there and kind of twisted myself around, did a weave here. So I'll let you kind of go from there.
All right. Well, let me start with the kind of probably the gloomiest take that I'll have which is first of all, I said a couple weeks ago after Michigan State, I wasn't ready to declare this a disappointing season. Now, after this loss, definitely. No matter what happens from here on out, this was a disappointing season. 9-4 is the best they can do. And, what's your signature win this year? At Minnesota? Like, it's not like you beat Ohio State even like you did in 2017,
right.
Or you just don't have that. And you even look back at 2017 is a great example. You had, hey, we can beat the big dogs. Like, we can do it. We just got to put a whole season together. 2018 was, to me, that was a little bit of a letdown because you had the team to actually do it that year, and you lost a lot of games you probably shouldn't have lost. Now, there were a few injuries involved in there, but there was also a lot of poor coaching in there because
absolutely,
not using Noah Fant correctly, for example, is the flashpoint of that season.
Right.
2019, by and large, a successful season. You went 10-3, and yes, there were frustrations because you got sacked 8 times at Michigan that year, lost 10-3. You had the ball like 6 times in their territory and got 3 points. Yeah, right. So there was a disappointing loss in there, but you went 10-3. You beat USC by 25 points in the Holiday Bowl. That was a pretty great way to end that year. That's not a disappointment. What they finished, like 15th in the country that year, something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, and they probably should have been higher, in my opinion.
Yeah, right. 2020, strange year, but hey, team looks good. Other than quarterback, hey, this team's on the right. It was a good year. I mean, let's be honest. Like, other than the first two frustrating games, a year of optimism. First 6 games of 2021. I know I'm winding up here.
Yeah.
Same thing. Like, you're building. You're like, this is great. It's great to be a Hawkeye fan. But pretty much since that Purdue game in 2021 till right now, you've had 3 straight years of bleh. Not much. What's your best win in there? Since Penn State 2021, which I know people are pointing at as not a great win anymore, but it was still a top 5 game. I still count that as a euphoric moment for the program. It really was. You're up to 2 in the country.
You got to live in the moment. Yeah, absolutely.
But since then, I get it. 3 years of blah. And I know 10-2, even 10-2 last year was painful to watch, and everyone knew it too. Everyone knew this was not sustainable. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. Like, it wasn't. People weren't lost in reality last year. They didn't think they could win the national title, or anything like that, go to the playoff, whatever. So I get it. So that's where I think these last 3 years, yes, are a red flag for the whole era right now, because you haven't seen much to get excited about. You can be a little bit excited about Tim Lester. We'll get to that. But the way the defense has regressed this year, just systemically, it has not been enough to get excited about, because you thought this was going to be a better production. Because if you got the offense you needed this year, Scott.
Yeah.
You needed average offense. You got average offense.
Right.
And you still didn't get the results. And I think there's defense. I think there's coaching. I think it's been a disappointment.
It for sure is, because you've got, last year and in 2022 and even in 2021 as well, you had the defense to be very successful. The defense was elite. And when you bring back all of those players, in the back of your mind and their minds and everybody's minds is, okay, well, at least on that side of the ball, they're going to be one of the best teams in the country. And we have not seen that. In fact, that's been the most disappointing part, particularly in the if you want to pull out all 3 losses that were winnable, it was because of defensive breakdowns. Iowa State, giving up a 30-yard pass to Jalen Knoll and then the 75-yarder or whatever down the middle of the field for the touchdown. You look at Michigan State and UCLA. You gave very poor rushing teams 200-plus yards on the ground, and you're built to stop that. There are two things that this defense holds true as absolute principles and tenets. Stop the run and don't give up explosive plays. Explosive plays killed them against Iowa State, and the run stopped and killed them against Michigan State and UCLA. If they played even close to what they did last year, those three would be wins. That's really disappointing. At the same time, we saw historically bad offenses from 21 through 23. Last year being the worst in the Big Ten since 1984. This year, we're seeing the best rushing offense in the Big Ten. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Last week notwithstanding, you've seen this team average, they were last week going in, they were like 30.8 points per game. I don't know if they're 29, 30 points now, something like that. That's a winning number. That would have kept Brian employed. So you have those aspects. I've seen the offensive line is playing really well, even though everybody's kind of knee jerk on, well, they sucked last week. Well, sort of, but not as much as you think. I think the receivers have gained a lot of ground. Quarterback has been a letdown, a major letdown. But the problem is that the results are similar to the past, even though one side, it's like, just get a little bit of offense. And with that defense, we don't have any of that. So fans are like, well, okay, let's look ahead. Next year, look at that schedule. Look at who we're losing, and it's like, how can I be excited for that? That's the lack of hope. At least going into this year, people had hope. They bought all the tickets. They were excited. And the letdowns happened during the season. Next year, now this is those classic Ferentz years where, they'll overachieve. But, sometimes you want all the confluence of everything to hit at the same time. And it just had, and that's what I think for Iowa fans is so difficult. The only season where I felt like everything in the last 30 plus years, where everything hit exactly at the same time, the way you wanted it, and the conclusion met your expectation, was women's basketball last year, getting to the championship game. I mean, that was a year everybody expected them to do well, and they did. And they probably exceeded expectations. Football, as we've said, 2010, 7-5, just 8-5, I guess, overall. And 2016 they lose to North Dakota State, and then they lose all their wide receivers. And 2018, as you said, I mean, you look at those games, and that was just, what are you guys doing out there? I mean, blow the Wisconsin game, okay, but there's just so many other.
Well, it wasn't okay because they didn't throw the fade to Noah Fant in that game.
Yeah, I mean,
which we've been over a million times, but you should have put that game away 3 different ways. Not left it up to Alex Hornibrook.
Yeah, and then that's the last game that they stuck 4-3 as their primary defense with Ben Neiman, who, by the way, started for the Lions on Sunday night.
Our Lions.
The mighty Lions. So we've gotten to this point, Chad, and I want to ask you this. What are if going forward, if you, me, the fan base try to do this analytically, not emotionally, why should Kirk Ferentz remain as coach? Why shouldn't he just ride off to the sunset versus, you know what, I think he's still the right guy. I have faith that he can do this again. And, he's my coach, ride or die. I mean, where do you, I'm not saying where you sit on this, but build me a case, maybe one way or the other, and then I'll kind of do the same.
Yeah. I mean, I would say Iowa's chances to succeed still are better with Kirk Ferentz right now because of the system he has in place. We started this conversation with dysfunction, and this is not a dysfunctional organization of Iowa football. It's not the Bears. It's not even close to the Bears. In fact, it's closer to the Lions. Yeah, to be honest. Now, is Tim Lester Ben Johnson? I'm not going to say that. But listen, you still believe in Phil Parker. To me, you believe in Seth Wallace. Now, if you start losing those guys, then I get worried. But the CEO is still keeping these guys together. And I think the Lester hire you're seeing something ascending. You asked what the points per game were. They're at 29.2, Scott. 29.2 points per game. They even averaged a decent amount per play the other night. They just didn't have the ball enough because the defense has forced 3 punts in 3 road games. The last 3 road games, 3 punts. That's all the defense is forced. And you can say we're too hard on the defense, we're expecting too much, but you're forcing 1 punt per game and expecting with, an offense that is down Luke Lachey, down Addison Ostrenga, down Reese Vanderzee, and, now they're down to who knows what at quarterback. They're still squeezing quite a bit out of the offense, to be honest. After you tied at 17-17, how many plays did you give the offense? 3 plays, 21-3. You couldn't get off the field, not once. You let them run the 4-minute offense to perfection, and you misused your timeouts, by the way, and you lost the game. So anyway, I don't know, where was I going with this? But what I was saying was the defense, I feel like the leadership I don't think that's Phil Parker's fault that they didn't get off the field. I think the elephant in the room, Scott, is the seniors are not playing. Kirk Ferentz always says, if you want to have your best teams, your seniors have to play their best. And I don't think across the board, their veteran players they have not ascended their games for the most part. Jamari Harris has, yes. Y.A. Black has, yes. Ethan Hurkett, I will say yes. Outside of them, Jay Higgins just didn't have much to go up on. Outside of them, you're seeing drop off. And you look at the PFF grades, Tyler and I went through it on Hawk Central. It's been a drop off, whether you buy into PFF or not. It's been a drop off. So I think it's the performance of the players on the field this year more so than the system, which is why I like the hire of Tim Lester. I still do. So that's why I would say be careful what you wish for. I still would be in the camp of Ferentz is still the right guy to lead the program right now until I see something otherwise. I think his game management sucks. Yeah. Other than that, I like the system. I like what's in place, offense, defense, special teams in terms of leadership. They just have not gotten the play on the field that I don't think the players have come through.
I think you're right. And I think there are a couple of areas that they have been deficient in this year that we've waited on, and a little bit of help in one area and not as much in the other. I would say you look at the right corner that Deshaun Lee has played that fairly well the last few weeks, probably since the Michigan State game. That may change against Maryland. They have a terrific wide receiver, one of the best in the country. But, if there's an elephant in the room, it's defensive line has not played well. And I hate going down this path because we're talking about specific players or younger. But, Aaron Graves had a humongous game against Illinois State. He had 3 sacks. He's had 2 since then. Edge play kind of got dominated the other day. They ran at will off tackle, and everybody else got kind of caught in the wash. But a lot of it was caused by defensive ends having no, not in every play, but on a lot of plays, they were bounced. They were shoved all over the field, and that left wide open holes. And then again, linebackers, and then Higgins was out. Linebackers were trying to make up for that, and they couldn't erase that hole, and it took a while. And then there were some big plays too that I think some of the secondary didn't play real well. It was early on, and Iowa had already scored a touchdown, and UCLA was like on a 3rd and long, and there was like a crossing route that went for, I don't know, 15, 20 yards, something like that. And Jamari Harris was just jogging, literally jogging and in chase mode. Didn't do anything. And I'm like, what are you doing? You've got the guy. You're playing man coverage. And I don't get what you're trying to do or not do here. And so I think there has been this letdown, or maybe it's that we're expected to take another rise, and they've already maxed out their talent. And when there aren't a Joe Evans or a Logan Lee or somebody else like that were really good, that last year edge rusher was an issue too. It's been an issue since the Packers, the guy Lucas Van Ness,
Yeah, right.
They've been losing guys, and so when I look at that defense, I mean, granted, we're really shredding them, and they only gave up 20 points. But then you also think, well, they caused 2, turnovers in the end zone that benefited them. And then on the last possession of the game, they could have very easily given up another point. So then it's like, okay, now you got a problem. So building my case both ways is, and what Kirk has to do, and I don't know how he can do it, is build against that lingering either apathy or B, just desirous for change, that he has to try to convince people that hope is on the way. And the only way you can really do that is A, play better the last 2 weeks, and then B, go get some people in the portal next month. Now, I don't know what the cash flow situation is right now. I'd have to check into it, but that to me is the one way where you can convince people, because it did kind of happen that way 2 years ago with Cade McNamara. But now you're going to have to go back out again and get a quarterback. And again, that's like signing a free agent quarterback, man. They're not cheap. And how do you do it? But even more important is you're losing a lot of pieces now on defense. And you have some positions, I think, where you can replace those guys, but not all of them. You're going to go out and you're not going to replace it. Nobody on the defense is as good as Y.A. Black is doing what he's doing. You're going to need a pass rusher at some point. Those are expensive positions because everybody wants them. I mean, if you're doing it at UNI, then, somebody at Wisconsin or, whatever, they're going to see it. So I don't know. Then there's some history here too, Chad, that I'd like to add. And that is, since, I'm not going to take it back to the magical 15 year. I'm going to take it for the last 5 years, since 2019. Iowa ranks 11th among Power 5, Power 4 conference teams who've been in Power 4 conferences the whole entire era in victories with 50. And they're one behind Penn State. I mean, this is a program that's very competitive, that wins games, that beats even in years, that even this year they're 6-4. And in years where they've had clear deficiencies, they still beat opponents with those deficiencies. Last year, 10 wins. You cannot even hope to have that kind of development out of any other coach, because Kirk's the best that's ever done it. And so in some ways, you've got these two competing forces, which is, I just want to see something different. I've seen the same thing for 26 years versus a fear that it could get worse, but also a realization that it's still not that bad. I mean, it's still pretty good. And you're Iowa, and you got to look at the mirror. You're Iowa. Not that that's a down thing to think down about, but you're not Ohio State. You're not Michigan. You're not Tennessee. You should expect things to be better, but also not have this entitlement that you deserve better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. Well, Scott, there's no dysfunction with GameDay Men's Health. No frustration. Every week is solid. No frills. Productive win. Undefeated at GameDay Men's Health, which can get you on the right track with testosterone replacement therapy and truly can help you feel like you're in your 20s again. Losing testosterone as we age, very, very normal. But restoring testosterone gets you in a better mood, gives you a stronger sex drive, gives you more energy during the day, gives you a boost in competitive or recreational sports activities. GameDay Men's Health also very helpful with weight loss. Consultations, as I say, every week are free, easy, simple, complete privacy, zero obligation. They can check your levels. Check them out at GameDayMen'sHealth.com or call one of their locations. We got one in Ankeny, we got one in West Des Moines, and over by you in North Liberty, Scott. Just to continue the defensive conversation, I want to read something. Somebody I get help on my DVR Mondays. I'm not, I'm not a football coach, but I have people that help me. And one thing that he messaged me about the game was this, and I'm going to protect his identity here. But he says, that was a bizarrely bad effort game versus the run. Assignment and fit-wise, they were usually okay, but the D-line gave ground almost every play on the ground, and no one was shedding blocks. Mm-hmm. So I think that, that's the film analysis by somebody who knows about what was happening against the worst-ranked rush defense in the country. So that articulates what I was kind of saying with, I think it's the Jimmies and the Joes this year, not necessarily the X's and the O's, as it's kind of where I would go with this team. And I would argue that the X's and O's have gotten substantially better on the offensive side of the football. Special teams, you're going to lose a little bit without Torrey Taylor, obviously, but overall, special teams, a net neutral from last year, maybe a slight downgrade, but actually the kicker's probably been better. So yes. There's not much to talk about there, but let me ask you this. I mean, do you think Ferentz is going to come back? Do you think – everyone always asks me that, and I say my answer at this point is I think there's a 25% chance that he moves on. I think he's coming back, but I don't know that for sure. This is not something we know. Mm-hmm. He doesn't tell us, hey, I'm coming back. It's he's always said it's going to be a feel thing, but like it would be – I mean, he's going to turn 70, right, in August. It will be a natural breaking point. You got this veteran team. He's not going to get the mountaintop on moment to go out on this year. We thought maybe he would. I don't know. What do you think about that? What do you think about that question when you get it? Because I'm sure you get it all the time like I do.
Yeah, and we've had it forever. I mean, it's been, really like 10 plus years of this question. And when Brian was hired, he's going to be the replacement. And Lord knows how many times, we had to place a moratorium on that when I was with Morehouse, because we just say, we talk about it like once a year and that's it, the replacement thing. And I think he's coming back. If he's not having fun, then I could see him leaving or enjoying himself. But he's now in a position where he has to win out to tie Woody Hayes for the record. So in Tampa, that's probably where they're going to end up. Or the Duke's Mayo Bowl or something. But even then, if they go to Duke's Mayo Bowl, he's not tying the record because that means they lost at least once.
Gotcha.
So yeah, if they win out, they go to Tampa. They're going to play a pretty good SEC team. If they win that game, that's actually a really good game to do that on. And then he's got, then he has some soul searching to make. I still think he has some contributions to the game. I don't think that, I think with Hayden, we saw, there was a decline. I think people may forget, but after the 91 season, they only had even one decent season. They had one season where they were just in 97. That's as disappointing as a season I can remember. Yeah. Starting off 4-0, and Tavian Banks was the Heisman of September, and just all that. But I think he's still got more to offer. And one thing I stand steadfast in saying is I've never seen a better coach in any sport who responds to adversity better than Kirk Ferentz. And whether it's all those games over the years, but it's also the situations. And 2020 stands out most of all because he could have walked away then in the summer and it would have been understandable. They were 0-2 and during COVID after everything they experienced. And then their best offensive weapon gets an OWI, and then all of a sudden they write off 6 wins. So I don't think he's done yet. I don't think the time is long. I don't think that he's going to go till 2029, but I think he's got probably at least one more year because he's the type of guy that I want to fix it. And this year, even if they look to me like they're on track for probably an 8-5 season, and if they get to that point, he's going to say, well, what do I do to fix it? And then they're playing Iowa State for the record next year, which would be kind of interesting in its own right because he had 200 over there. And then next year it would be break Woody Hayes' record over there. But I think he'd probably. I could see one more year, personally, and that would probably be my. If you're asking me a guess, I think he's got one more year, and then that'll be it.
Your next year's schedule is here's how it goes. Well, actually, we don't know the order, but we know the opponents. We know the non-conference, which is Albany. So that'll be a W. Then at Iowa State, then UMass at home. They moved that game up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But here are the conference opponents next year. In Iowa City, so you do get 5 Big Ten home games next year. You get Indiana. Yeah, that looked easier before.
Yeah,
Maybe not anymore. Michigan State, Minnesota, Oregon, and Penn State. Woo. Woo.
So 3 out of the top 5 are going to be at Iowa City next year?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. 3 of the top 5 in the playoff rankings right now.
And plus Minnesota,
yeah.
which beat you the last time there.
Exactly. And Michigan State just beat you.
Yeah.
It's interesting they play them again, but they do.
Yeah.
Then they're at Nebraska, at Rutgers, at USC. So you get another shot in LA, folks. And then at Wisconsin. So those are your road games next year. Not easy. I mean, that could be a tough year for Hayden. I mean, not Hayden, for Kirk. Hayden like in 98, right? Maybe not quite that bad.
No, it shouldn't be that bad.
But
you never know, though.
But anyway, so it's not like he'd be coming back to a friendly schedule. This was the year. So I get it. So to circle us back to everything, and I do want to talk about Lester and what he said yesterday, or Tuesday, I should say. We're recording this Wednesday. Is just, do you stick with him? If you're a fan, obviously it's up to everybody. But I guess maybe that's a good transition to Lester, because I think the hope comes from that you're seeing ascension offense. I think that's where I would lean on that front, and you still have faith in Phil Parker. I don't think he's going anywhere. Now, does Seth Wallace get an opportunity this year? I think that's possible. Maybe.
To be a head coach?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
He's 1-0.
Right. Well, if you're up the road on 380 at UNI, I think you look at both LeVar Woods and Seth Wallace. And I think if you're those two, you interview for the job. I'm not saying you take it, but I'm thinking you should check it out, because let's say it does play out next year and Kirk retires a year from now. If you're Seth, it's hard to probably persuade the athletic director and how many ex-community, number of community members have to join that search. Hopefully fewer than the last time they had a coaching hire. How do you persuade them that you're the next guy without really having head coaching experiences? Because you are talking about the Big Ten, and it's an incredibly difficult league. However, if you go to UNI and you say they're 2-8 right now, is that right? And he's got like 2 more games, and Mark Farley does. Then maybe you go there and maybe you win 6 or 7, and you go to the playoff, because I don't think they're that far away from that stuff. Then you've got something in the bank. Or LeVar, if you want to be a head coach, you've got to be a head coach at some point. Now, I'm not saying that they should do that because it's their heart to decide, and their wallets will be lighter going there than staying here. But I forgot kind of where I was going with this here. But,
well, let me plug in and say, according to to the internet, Mark Farley is paid $400,000 at UNI. He probably gets some supplemental income as well. But, Seth Wallace makes $1 million plus bonuses at Iowa. LeVar is not too far behind.
He's ahead of Farley for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So LeVar's in the 700,000 to 800,000 range, if I recall correctly. So anyway, that was just to fill in that gap there. It would be a pay cut, but you're right. Those would be two of my first calls from UNI for sure. And maybe even, those would be, either one would be a huge loss for Iowa. So that's what I'm saying. How long does Kirk keep these guys together? Did he, he's obviously a great boss, but that would start to peel away some hope too if you start losing these guys. Now, listening to Tim Lester on Tuesday, Scott, man, that was energizing. If you want to hear a guy that gets you excited about football, excited about offense, excited about how he can develop a quarterback, go watch the Tim Lester 22 minutes from Tuesday because he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And Iowa has a quarterbacks coach, folks. Like, that is something that clearly they did not have. He also knows how to identify talent. Like, think about this, Scott. James Rezar switched positions before before the season started. You brought him in as a quarterback, the previous regime.
Yeah.
And Tim Lester immediately realized that, I mean, that's what it tells me, right? He immediately realized that guy is not going to be a quarterback at Iowa. And a guy that is 4 for 17 at Colorado State in 2 years is a potential future quarterback for Iowa because of the traits that Tim Lester talked about with Jackson Stratton. Like listening to that gave me hope for Iowa's offense, that here's a guy that knows how to identify talent. And what'd you think of my comparison? I thought Stratton looked like a 2013 CJ Beathard. Remember that when he came in against Wisconsin that one year in 13?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was ugly, but you could see the arm talent. You could see he was 4 for 15 in that game. I went back and looked.
I know. I was going to say he was like 4 for 15, 4 for 16, something.
Yeah, but you could see the talent. Like, you could see, and he became something. So I'm just saying, like, to me, there's hope there at the offensive coordinator position for Iowa, and he needs receivers. He is not, his best receiver is Jacob Gill, who had 1 catch at Northwestern last year.
Yeah, right.
And he's turned him into something because he can block and he's reliable. In the Tim. If you can get some guys in here that want to block and want to be, just believe in Tim Lester. Like, I feel like this passing game is, obviously it hasn't even got started, Scott. But that's where my hope, if I'm an Iowa fan looking for hope, that's where my hope is right now.
My hope is definitely on that side of the ball because I agree with you. I mean, Tim is he's long-winded in a good way. Brian was long-winded too, not so much in a good way sometimes. But Tim, he knows what he's looking at, and he's played the position before. He's coached it at a high level. And so he understands the offense, and the offense is so much better now than it was a year ago schematically. I mean, maybe, you poo-poo 17 points, but I think not enough people are looking at it for the situation of, wow, they're all the way down to a walk-on quarterback trying to finish that game. And I thought he played pretty well, all things considered. I thought, I was thinking, oh boy, this is going to be Deacon Hill territory, and it wasn't. But I think going forward, you rely on him implicitly for your next quarterback. And right now, it's not too early to start talking about next year in that position. Cade will be gone.
Let's do it.
Cade will be gone. Brennan has 1 more year. Marco, I don't know what his future is here. It doesn't seem like it's very bright, frankly. You look at Jackson Stratton, potentially a future here. You have Jimmy Sullivan, who's going to enroll early. That's a good thing. I think that they do need to go out and get somebody else, even if it's a 1 year, 2 year thing. It could, and I think you could go 2 different routes. You could go out and get a starter. Let's say a backup Ohio State quarterback like Devin Brown or somebody decides to enter the portal, and you go out and you get him. Then, okay. You make him their starter, but let Brendan Sullivan know enough in advance. So if he wants to make a move, he can, because I think you owe him that. Or you go out and you see, every year there are 4 stars at Blue Bloods who get passed up left and right. And let's look at Luke Altmaier over at Illinois. He's had a terrific year, and he was Ole Miss. And Lane Kiffin went out and got Jackson Dart from USC, and Jackson Dart's a better player than Luke Altmaier. But Luke Altmaier is a good player too. You take him in Iowa. So if you can go out and get a redshirt freshman or even a sophomore and say, okay, these are our 2 quarterbacks for next year, and we're going to allow Brennan to kind of be the starter and allow, whatever player to be kind of his backup, but work his way in and throw some. I wouldn't have a problem with that either. But I saw a lot of good things from what Tim's brought. They still have a couple of pretty good offensive linemen returning. Jennings Dunker is going to be one of the best in the country. I think Bo Stevens should be pretty good. They may need another one. I don't know, portal wise or just to fill in the gap wise. Addison Ostranga is going to be a good tight end. I like the receivers and the running backs. You're not going to have Caleb Johnson most likely, but you're going to have some pretty good players there too. So overall, I think it's brighter on that side of the ball than on defense right now. And I was, it was kind of a wild thing, like kind of like what's going on in Des Moines, this month, but I think we saw a lot there. And speaking of the wild, visit iowawild.com for tickets. And in just a couple of days on November 15th, you got Hockey Fights Cancer against the Texas Stars, and it benefits Cops Against Cancer. It's the first $2 beer night of the season. If that doesn't get you juiced, go to a hockey and cheap beer. Got to do it. $3 off Fireball. Okay, if you're in your 20s, go for it. And it's a dedicated night to those battling cancer and those who've lost loved ones to cancer. And we all know somebody who has. Then the next night, November 16th, is Veterans Appreciation Night, and that's also against the Stars. And they're going to be wearing specialty jerseys, the Iowa Arrows jersey, which is what they were before they became part of the Wild family. They're going to be auctioning off those jerseys. There's an appreciation hat giveaway to the first 1,500 fans, a concert before the game with Birdchild Duo. It's really, they're going to be honoring veterans throughout the game, and 2-for-1 Confluence beers made in beautiful Des Moines, Iowa. So I would go to one of those two games if I lived in the Des Moines market, and I know all of you should too.
Well, hey, it's a bye week, so why not?
Yeah,
why not?
exactly.
And hockey is the best sport in person, and I've been to Wild games. My son has performed done some music stuff over there for some of those games, and it is a lot of fun. Really, it is, and it's a great arena.
Yeah.
Where were we? Leicester, the quarterback. Let me get my thoughts on quarterback before we go here. It's very complicated. So the portal opens December 9th. Okay, so it'll be between the bowl game and Nebraska game. So that is a very huge. It's only open for 20 days. So you got to move. You got to move there if you want to move a quarterback. They absolutely need at least a receiver. I wrote that was my main post game column out of the UCLA game was they have to go to the portal at quarterback. They just can't get in this situation every year where they're down to the Deacon Hill guy.
Yeah, right.
You have to do better there. And I think long term, I think Lester will develop these guys in the right way in his offense. He seems to be happy here based on his second to last answer. I think it was on Mitch Vick's question. I think he likes just coaching ball. Now I would be worried that he could get poached to the NFL. I would be, because he has a lot of good connections there to really important people. Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur.
You're right.
Those are some extensive trees that are forming. So I would be worried, but he does seem to like it here. So I'm torn on that. I think it just depends on the situation, because I think you could go into the season with Sullivan as your starter, because I think he can be developed further than he is right now. I do believe that. I don't think Cade can be developed much further.
No.
But I think Brendan can be, if given the time, as the one. And maybe you could argue they should have done that from the beginning, Scott. But if you identify an option that is better, that you think you have a chance at, you got to go do it too. It's cutthroat now. You have to. So I would not be comfortable going into the season with Sullivan, Stratton, other Sullivan, and Pat Fitzgerald's kid. That it's not good enough going into the season, because you're one injury away from Jackson Stratton again. And we're talking him up a little bit here, but Lester said the other day, no, I would not feel confident going into Maryland with Jackson Stratton. Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
he hasn't gotten reps, so don't get carried away here. So I guess I would have to know who the quarterback is before I say replace Sullivan versus supplement Sullivan. But at minimum, you have to supplement Sullivan. That's where I am.
No question. That's where they have to be right now. Is they have to have a solid at minimum number 2 next year. I think that's, and Marco broke his thumb. I don't know where things stand there. I don't see a real pathway to the field for him in the big picture. I think it would have been there. They might not have had to go to the portal to begin with. Or if they did, they grabbed Stratton and not Sullivan. And that's not a slight to Marco. Maybe it's us, not them, type of thing. But then again, maybe he makes some major strides, or Jimmy Sullivan's enrolling in January. Does he look like a guy that, hey, he might be able to play early? That's something that Lester is going to have to figure out, because he is kind of I won't say dual threatish, so he can move and he can throw. That's a real plus. But I think I would trust him enough to make a good decision. And you're right. If Devin Brown decides to leave Ohio State and he's available, then I think what you do is you go out and get him, and you're honest with Brendan that we think we upgraded the position. And if he wants to transfer, because he's already got a degree from Northwestern, bless him, then, by all means, or if you want to stay, compete, whatever, but he's coming in at that position of being number 1. I think you got to do that, Chad. If let's say next year is Kirk's last year, or even 2 years are left, you've got to maximize your opportunities, because this is the way people will remember you. And how you leave the program, because Lord knows we were there at the end of the Hayden era, and it took years for Kirk to really put it back together, because it was in bad shape.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine if Steeple Ridge Bourbon had been around in 1998, it would have been a great time to reach for a bottle. If you haven't pulled the trigger yet, despite our pleas on a bottle of Steeple Ridge Bourbon, what are you waiting for? It is almost Christmas time. So if you don't drink or you don't like bourbon, whatever, there's got to be a loved one in your life that could use a nice brown bottle of Steeple Ridge Bourbon, a perfect gift for them. Give them a high-quality, delicious drinking, award-winning, farm-to-bottle craft bourbon. If you don't find Steeple Ridge at your favorite grocery store, ask for it by name. Steeple Ridge is distilled, aged, and bottled in Iowa by Lonely Oak Distillery. It's like gift. It's time to start getting the gifts. It's like almost Black Friday here, Scott. Should we get into a lot of people ask me about bowls, Scott? You're our bowl expert, so give me the scenarios for the Hawkeyes. I trust you more than anybody on Iowa's bowls destination. So we're going to give you the floor.
Okay, well, thank you on that. I hope you're not. If anybody does book on these recommendations, make sure that they're refundable, because I can't predict what Iowa's going to do in the next 2 games. Mm-hmm. But let's start at the top. First of all, 4 Big Ten teams are ranked in the top 5 right now for the BCS. Oh, way back here. CFP rankings. So if Indiana at least puts forth a decent effort and the other 3 went out, you're going to see 4 teams in the playoff. Take the next step. The Citrus Bowl is the first team or first bowl out, as it always is. Iowa has a no stamped on it, which means no. They're not going to be in the Citrus Bowl. They've been there 2 out of the last 3 years. It's time to move on. The next bowl is what let's call it the Outback. It's the ReliaQuest, but I miss the Outback. And I identify, there's like 3 teams that kind of fit the profile now for those 2 bowls: Illinois, Minnesota, and Iowa. Of course, Minnesota and Iowa lost last weekend, which kind of hurt it. But Illinois, I think, despite the loss to Minnesota, is right now positioned best to end up in Orlando. And then it comes down to like Iowa or Minnesota for Tampa. They're going to take Iowa 100 times out of 100 because Kirk loves the bowl, because the way the coaches think, oh, well, I know where everything's at and we can get around. It's like logistics of being a football coach. But they haven't, seriously, both Illinois and Minnesota have been there more recently than Iowa has. So Tampa, that's where it's at. Then if it's beyond Tampa, which let's say they go 6-6, and that's not a scenario I'm wishing for anybody. It's Music City Bowl. Now, then you're in territory with Nebraska and Michigan and those teams. And let's face it, if your options are, I could get Nebraska, who hasn't been to a bowl game since, Obama was president, back in 2016. You're going to take them because they're going to flock there. Or Michigan, that's going to mean a lot of eyeballs against an SEC team. So you're going to take those two. Next one is Pinstripe Bowl, kind of the same scenario. I had it sketched out where Nebraska goes to Asheville, Michigan goes to New York. I think that's probably what it lays out. The next one is Duke's Mayo Bowl. That's one that I think Iowa would be in play for at 6-6, unless Minnesota's like 7-5 or 8-4, then they'll probably end up there. Then it would be Arizona, which you think about it, it's like, shouldn't the bowl locations get worse the worse you are? It's like I could go to Charlotte or Nashville or New York and then Arizona. I could just be worse and go there. But I think that's they wouldn't fall farther than that. So right now, if you were to give me, I would say percentage wise, if they split, let's say they beat Maryland and lose to, your favorite team from the West, go 7-5. I think that they probably end up in Tampa, or at the other one option I would say is maybe Charlotte. I'd go like 85-15. Now, if they go 6-6, nobody will even want to talk bowls.
Right. Yeah. So if they win out, almost for sure Outback. Oh, yeah. Right? Yeah, I wouldn't split out. So Outback 100%. Is definitely ReliaQuest. Sorry.
Yeah.
And hey, it's been 6 years, folks. It's been a drought. Like right? We talked about the 18th season.
Yeah,
that seems like forever ago. Scott, Jake Gervais back there.
Yeah, Nick Easley.
Nick Easley was the MVP. Yeah.
Martez Sweat.
Yeah, that's right.
Jeffrey Simmons. I mean, they had a lethal defense.
My God. Minus 15 rushing yards in that game.
Yeah. Both teams had incredible defenses. And then you look at, so it's been 6 years since you've been to Tampa and kind of eyeballing the matchups. You kind of hope, right now it could be like a South Carolina or a Texas A&M. And I don't know that either one's a real great matchup at this point for Iowa, but they, give them a fist fight, I'm sure. So South Carolina is a lot better than the last time Iowa played South Carolina. Let's put it that way.
Well, it would be, honestly, if for the disappointing season that it's been, as we agree on, that it would be nice to get a chance to play a quality team at the end, just to see, can you finish something to be really motivated for, you would think. And let's be honest, like this Iowa team has been a lot like 18 in some ways because they've blown out some decent teams at home. Washington, Wisconsin, Northwestern's not good, but they blew them out. And, they've kind of got some qualities, that 18 team, to be honest, like where they should be better than their record is. That 18 team went 8-4 in the regular season. So
they did. I thought it went 9-3.
No, 8-4, and then they won the Outback to get to 9-4.
Right.
They lost to Wisconsin. They lost to Penn State, Northwestern, and Purdue.
Purdue. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the next year is when they went 10-3.
Yeah.
Here's two odd stats. In their last three losses, that they've given up 200 yards rushing in each one of them. Mm-hmm. Ohio State, okay. UCLA, Michigan State. And their last three wins, all at home, they've scored 40 or more points.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just a strange season, So, because the sad part about it is, Chad, a week ago we were talking about this team just coming off a blitzkrieg over Wisconsin, 42-10, 329 yards rushing. It was just a massacre. And we kind of looked at this team like, wow, okay, they're really ascending. They're going to finish strong. Yeah, UCLA's has played better, but instead now we're picking up the pieces. And it's, what I found unique about Iowa and kind of the critiques of Iowa is some of the fans want to devalue everything that they've put out there. Like, oh, well, we haven't even won this Big Ten title since 2004. And I'm like, are you really going to penalize them for 2015, that 22-play drive that ended 27 seconds left in the game? We haven't won anything of note. Well, you've had 6 upsets over top 5 teams in the last 25 years. You know how many Nebraska has? 1. You know how many Penn State has? 1. Iowa has 6. I mean, that's pretty freaking incredible. And you look at, we haven't done. You won 3 division titles. You have, out of the last 9 years, 4 of them have had double-digit victories. I mean, this is still a really good program. There are issues, yes, and there are things to criticize, yes, but don't burn down the damn house just because you don't like the color of the bedroom. And that's kind of where they are.
Oh, you're good for one great analogy every week. I love it. That's a good one. As you mentioned, the CFP that came out Tuesday, Big Ten, 1, 2, 4, 5. Indiana better not get left out if they go 11-1. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
I'm already seeing arguments of that, and that would be ridiculous. Because if you look at the eye test, I don't care about the schedule. Like if that team had an M on its helmet, or I guess they don't have an M on the helmet, but you know what I mean. M is the logo,
right?
They would be automatically in the playoff. Not even close. Let's stop with this Indiana talk. They just beat Michigan the other day. I don't care how it looked. They're 10-0. I'm interested to see that Ohio State game. Unfortunately, it's the same time as the Iowa Maryland game next week, Scott. 11 a.m. But anyway. So while I was on bye, what are you going to be watching this week? You mentioned Nebraska. You must think they're going to be bowl eligible. Well, either Nebraska or USC is going to be in big bowl trouble after Saturday's game, 3 p.m. on Fox. Huskers at the Coliseum.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I did a story this week where I sketched out every program's most important game the rest of the way, and I kind of boxed it in tiers. And for USC, I put the UCLA game because I think that's kind of a win or else game because they play Notre Dame last. But you could also make a case that this one is it. I think Nebraska has, as always, has a little bit more, have a few more mulligans there because they do play Wisconsin at home. And I think they have a chance to end a 10-game losing streak to the Badgers and become bowl eligible at home. That would probably warm their hearts quite a bit. And so that's but yes, USC and Nebraska is one that I'm going to be watching. I'm going to watch the heck out of Penn State and Purdue because I wrote about Purdue's absolute disaster of a program. You want to talk about dysfunctional? This is on the Bears level, where 2 years ago they went to Indianapolis. Now they rank 18th in both scoring offense and defense. Their coach, who's 38 years old and 2 years removed from being Illinois' defensive coordinator, is calling the offensive plays. And they've been outscored in their 3 matchups against top 5 competition, 146-7. And then they also have Penn State and Indiana remaining on their schedule. So I will see, almost like a fist fight between the toughest kid in the school and some mouthy overweight kid or something. It's like, okay, here we go. But so I could see that. That's what I'm probably going to watch on Saturday. And then, Georgia, Tennessee on the national scale is pretty important as well. Well, looks like things are, it looks like Chad's kind of fading here. So we're going to wrap this up and just say thanks, everyone, for listening to us this week on Legends and Listeners. For Chad Leistikow, this is Scott Dochterman at The Athletic. And follow our work and follow and subscribe to Iowa Everywhere.